Hey, I'm Andrea, and today I'd like to share something on fear. I'd like to encourage you to be as afraid as you want to be as fearful as you want. There is nothing to resist. And I realized that the very resistance to fear is fear. So just allow yourself to be fearful, even as fearful as you want to be. Um, you will realize that fear was in the resistance and not so much in the situation that you thought that you needed to face. Whenever we think that our objects and the situation, um, or whenever we feel that we are subjects and the situation is the object and we need to do something to change it, to modify it, to fix it, there is anxiety and there is fear. So be as fearful as you want. Give yourself the permission to fear and see fear melt, because fear is in the resistance. Us being this separate thing, this separate center of action, of control, is what has detached us from life, from time. We and this is revealed in our daily expressions. We usually say something like, we came into this world, or life is passing us by, as if life is some sort of train and we're trying to get in, or we're we're just running, trying to chase life, and life eludes us or something. um, we are somehow always with this sensation that we and life are something different, are something apart. And that separation is what puts us in the position of having to face something, having to face life, having to face destiny, having to face death, having to face disease, having to face fear. But what happens when there is no separate entity, when there is no separate self apart from the world, apart from life, apart from fear? What happens when there are not two anymore, when there is just one? What happens when there is no separation between me and life, between me and death, when between me and anxiety? What happens when there is no resistance, when there is no one there, no separate thing trying to face the situation? Just um, I could say try not to be afraid, but that itself would be another kind of resistance. Like, you try to accept the situation. I'm not saying that you should accept anything. Um, Whenever there is separation, there is the notion that I need to face something, that I somehow need to have the courage to uh, respond or react to a certain situation. And um, that very separation, that very detachment from life itself, is what causes this feeling of unreality, this feeling of homelessness. And our deep desire is not so much to preserve the body, to preserve our wealth, to preserve um, our personalities, to preserve our minds. Our greatest desire is to be one, is to not to have to face anything, not is going home, is our greatest desire is to finally be at peace, to cease struggle. And if we're truly honest with ourselves, we will realize that life is made out of friction. Life as we know it, of course, is friction. We would think that without friction, without me having to oppose something, or without having to do something about uh, a certain situation, nothing will be done. We just cannot imagine a life without friction, without resistance, without a doer, without someone that needs to interfere and change things. And this is what will is resistance basically to what is, whatever that is. If there is fear, then there is this notion that I shouldn't be afraid. If I am experiencing anxiety, there is this notion that I shouldn't be feeling that way, or that I need to do something about anxiety, or I should change it somehow. And you will realize that it's just adding more and more resistance to resistance, and um, there is nothing as relieving as impotence. So I invite you to be as fearful as you want, as fearful as you can, you know? There is nothing to resist. And even if you want to resist fear, then give yourself permission even to resist. Because there is nothing really to resist, not even resistance itself. Be space for whatever that is going on. Be space for any sensation. I think that is living in the now, or living in the moment. Being space for the situation. Let the situation stay. Let the feeling stay. Let the emotion be whatever it wants to be. Just let it crash into the rocks, just like a wave crashes. You know, just let it release itself. Let the emotion pass through you. Don't do anything to resist it. Be space. Be space for the situation, uh, and you will notice that it's not something that we usually do. So it will feel perhaps weird in the beginning, but then you will feel great relief. Great relief in realizing that life is living itself, that resistance was in the fear. Just observe how fear melts away when resistance um, is, is not. When fear is invited to come in, to stay as long as it wants, something will happen. Be space for that. Be space for whatever it is that is going on. And you will see um, what happens. Because when you change, everything changes. When you're space for a situation, you will see what happens. And I would say that the life in, let's call it the spiritual path, is one of learning not to resist what is letting go of the contractions in the body and in the mind. Because being a separate self is not really, it's not really real, but you cannot say that it's not exist, that it doesn't exist, you know, just a hologram. A hologram is not, you could say it's not real, but you cannot say that it's not there, you know. It might not have substance, but it's there, it's perceived, it seems real. So as long as something seems real, it bothers us. So these belief that we are separate selves, that we are separate entities from life, that it gives us this notion of having to face something, of having to do something about it. Um, it it is merely a contraction, because it's not really a separate entity, but it's merely a contraction in the body, a contraction of, let's say, energy. I don't usually use this word, but it's like it's merely a contraction. What I use the example of the torch very much. Imagine the torch just moving in circles. That's all that there is to this circle of, to this sphere, or this ring of fire. It seems real. It seems like a golden ring, but it really has no substance. But the movement of the torch, it itself doesn't have solidity. But somehow the movement is what gives it the illusion of being real. And and that's what happens, really. There is no separate entity, but there is this notion of a separate me that has to do something about life, that has to face things, that has to oppose things, that has to take a position in life. Um, so that struggle, that friction, is basically what creates the notion of a separate self, just like the movement of the torch creates the notion of this ring, this solid ring of this golden solid ring. Not that it exists in reality. So um, when friction when friction dissolves, when friction just stops, the sense of self stops as well, because it's made out of activity, is made out of the activity of resisting and seeking. So yeah, if there is something that it could be useful from this video, is that um, you can be as afraid as you want. Actually, don't resist fear. Um, don't resist anything. Not even try. Don't resist anything, and don't try anything either. It's not. This is not. Don't resist fear, meaning try to be courageous, or or don't resist, or sorry, don't resist fear. So try not to resist fear, or try to be space for the situation. No, I mean, really try nothing. Try nothing. Don't seek, neither resist, and you will see how these this notion of a separate thing that has to face life, that has to face situations, just collapses, and you will realize what is your true self, which is perfect wholeness, completeness, bliss, and peace. uh, and you will be shocked. You will be very shocked when you realize that more than the so feared situation was not really what scared you to death, but it was resistance and friction which created the tension and created these um, and created fear, and not so much the situation. When you become the situation, uh, there what is there something to fear? Is there something to oppose to when you become it? So become fear, because it is resistance that gives you the notion of having to do something about it. So um, just be space for whatever it is that is rising in you. Everything, anything. You will realize it is not easy. To the mind, of course, it's not something that, it's not an exercise for the mind. You will realize also that by not resisting, the mind ceases, because the mind is basically resistance, is deliberation, choice. So yeah, um, be space, be space for whatever it is that is going on, and see fear melt away. But first, invite it to stay as long as it wants to stay. Don't do anything about it, let it be. Let it be.